What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto Clone Council? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Senator Palpatine sat in his office quietly celebrating but also going over his plans for the Galactic Republic. He was Sith and he understood that the Jedi had been in power for too long. While drinking a very rare bottle of Teresian ale, it was no doubt that he got drunk of it. Teresian ale is a very strong alcoholic drink. As it was while he was drunk his mind wandered to his plans to overthrow the Galactic Republic and destroy the Jedi, and it was in his drunkenness that he realized he needed a small regiment of super troopers. A small sect of clones that would be so very far above the regular clone troopers, capable of battling even Force users, and if required capturing rogue elements that would threaten his plans. And so it was the next morning, Palpatine awoke with a splitting headache and no memory of calling the Kaminoans to authorize the creation of the greatest trooper ever to be created, a trooper so trained that they would be able to completely take over enemy flagships by themselves. Troopers that would be able to survive in the cruelest of environments, commandos that would be far above the normal requisition clone troopers and in turn the planned ARC troopers and their split variant of commando clones. As it was the Kaminoans took his order to the letter, taking notice that the chips Palpatine had wanted to be implanted in the normal clone troopers was missing from his orders. And so it was that the Kaminoans started the creation of an elite of the elite class trooper. And it would be years later after this order being given that Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi would make his approach to main cloning facility on Commando, to make inquiries regarding a spoiled assassination attempt. Obi-Wan was admittedly shocked when he found out that there was an unknown army being created for the Republic. He was also but not entirely shocked to find out that the template the army was based off came from a Mandalorian bounty hunter, which was coincidentally what he was searching for. But nothing would have prepared him when he was taken from the tour, if he could call it that, to view the special creations. As you can see, these troopers are the pure embodiment of a soldier. They were requisitioned to be the best of the best, and we have taken the utmost pride in doing so. If I may give a small history lesson, I will be able to give you a small oversight on just what one of these troopers are able to do. The Kaminoan that was guiding him explained and asked, giving his acceptance to the history lesson, which he was frankly interested in hearing. The Kaminoan regaled Obi-Wan of an event that happened in their system 2 years prior to Obi-Wan's arrival. 2 years ago, one of our lead cloner scientists, Tao Jie, went rogue, creating for himself a small army that he intended to use in conquering this planet. When we found out, the Prime Minister ordered that this event would be the perfect test for these troopers. We sent a small battalion to quell the rogue threat. When the landing transports were approaching the city Tao Jie was hiding in, 200 of the 256 troopers were killed by hidden anti-air emplacements. The remaining troopers were spread all throughout the city. Half of those would be hunted, found them killed. Those that remained were ordered to wait for reinforcements or if able to retreat, but they ignored that order and proceeded to spread chaos all throughout the city. Tao Jie's rebels were hopelessly outmatched by the sheer intellect the troopers showed. Ambushes, sabotage, you name it, they pulled it off with 100% efficiency. The sheer pride that Obi-Wan could see on the storyteller's face showed him just how proud they were of these clones. Unfortunately, our information was false, as it turned out that there was only one trooper in the entire city, and this lone trooper was the one to cause such chaos within the city. Obi-Wan was shocked. If what was being said was true, then the sheer power a single trooper had. He didn't want to imagine them as his enemy. Luckily, the surviving clone was able to get information out to us, and to our shock, Tao Jie was planning on causing a great tidal collapse. Or I believe in some terms they're called tidal waves, or was it tsunami? You'll have to forgive me, I never really paid much attention to information outside of Commando. The Kaminoan informed Obi-Wan before continuing the story. When it was revealed what was planned, we gave our orders to the trooper do everything he can to possibly stop such an event from happening. He did this by creating a maelstrom under the city using a mixture of his own ingenuity and explosives. He was able to use Tao Jie's own device against him. The storyteller and Obi-Wan were walking as the story was being told. They stopped outside a door, where the story was finished. When we arrived to lend aid and combat against the rebel threat in force, we arrived to the sight of an unconscious, bloodied and battered clone trooper floating on a price of debris while everything else was in the distance being sucked into the depths of our ocean. The door opened just as the storyteller stopped talking, revealing a grown man with a great long scar going diagonally over his eye towards his chin. A mane of blonde hair that was drenched in sweat and still dripping, the results of a workout even a Jedi would pass out. May I introduce CCT-333, or rather after his eventful mission, Maelstrom. I'd prefer Naruto if you don't mind, my lady, it's a name that just feels right. The man, Naruto, spoke towards the Kaminoan before turning his attention towards the Jedi. And you must be the Jedi that was rumored to be abound. Well, rumors aside, come in, let us have a spot of tea. I have quite the reputation as a tea maker, I'm sure you'll be quite satisfied. Naruto invited as he walked back into his plain Spartan-style room. There was a bed in the corner, a set of chairs and a small table in another corner, and quite possibly the heaviest-looking workout set Obi-Wan had ever seen backed against the wall between the chairs, table and bed. You must work out a lot, Obi-Wan lamely commented. Naruto looked toward him as he moved to the table with a tea set in hand. Where he got it from Obi-Wan didn't know. Of course, I am a Commando clone, after all, gotta be in tip-top shape for anything could happen at any time. Obi-Wan hummed a little before sitting down and taking a sip. Holy sweet mother of all things related to the Force. Obi-Wan looked up at Naruto, pure shock on his face as the taste of the tea erupted in a flavor so amazing words could be put into simple terms. Haha, first-timers always look like that. Come on now, drink up, enjoy. I have a feeling you aren't here just to check up on the troops. In a matter of fact, I have a feeling you didn't even know about us, right? Obi-Wan nodded. Yes, that's right, or rather the Jedi Council didn't know that there was a clone army being created for the Republic, and I have the faintest feeling that even the Senate doesn't know. Oh well, we're here now, aren't we? Naruto said with humor. Naruto wasn't stupid, he knew deep down that the clone army was being created for a future war. It didn't help that he sliced into the databanks of the Kaminoan Council and found the hollow recording of his type of clone being requested to be made. He didn't trust that cloaked figure, not one bit. Returning his attention to the Jedi in front of him, absently refilling the teacups, he reassured the Jedi. In all honesty, if something ever happens, myself and my fellow brothers will help. As Naruto said this, Obi-Wan just then noticed that compared to the clones he saw previously, Naruto looked nothing like them. Deciding to question, he asked, I mean, no offense, but I just noticed you look nothing like the other clones? Obi-Wan hoped he didn't offend the clone that he was starting to see as a friend. Before Naruto could reply, the Kaminoan who accompanied Obi-Wan announced that she had to leave. Bidding the Jedi a farewell, she left the room. Well, now that she left, I'll continue. You asked why I look different. Well, it's because my template had a mixture of genes instead of the one gene that Bounty Hunter donated. No, my template has a mixture from all types of humanoid warriors, the most prevalent being of Mandalorian blood. Mandalorian, how interesting, Obi-Wan murmured, his thoughts going to his friend Satine. He abandoned those thoughts when he heard Naruto still speaking. I am the last of my type. After the battle with Tao Jie, it was decided that my template was too dangerous, so they stopped production of it and created another more peaceful but still war-worthy clone template. I was and still am the last true clone commando. I have no resentment to my brothers, but it does get lonely sometimes. But regardless of those morbid thoughts, I have accepted who I am and what I am. Naruto stood up, gestured for Obi-Wan to do the same, and both went to the door. Follow please, I'll take you to the Bounty Hunter line. War started. Galactic War started not too soon after Obi-Wan's visit to Kamino. Naruto and the other clones all made a bet on how long the peace would last the moment Obi-Wan left Kamino. Needless to say, Naruto won. The champion of Lady Luck struck again. Gods, how Naruto hated that little nickname. When word finally reached Kamino to start deploying troops to the desert world of Geonosis, Naruto was eager for a fight. Well, a fight and to save his Jedi friend. He never once expected to land in the middle of an arena and have a Twi'lek, a female Twi'lek, fall into his arms the moment he got off the gunship, dragging the female, who he noticed was wounded, back into the gunship. He applied a Bacta patch to the wound and set the woman down. Turning his attention back to the outside of the gunship, hey, he is male clone or not, the woman wore some very risque clothing. He quickly noted that all the Jedi they were sent to rescue were on gunships and they were already flying towards the main battle site. Hearing a groan behind him, he turned and saw the woman he saved, sweating and murmuring to herself while unconscious. Without question, he turned his comm onto the pilot. Pilot, Take us to a medical station ASAP, wounded Jedi. Yes sir. The pilot responded. That dealt with Naruto turned his attention back to the Twi'lek and started basic field aid on her. It would have to do until medical personnel were able to get to her. An explosion rocked the gunship ship. Looking out through the cracks of the gunship door, he saw a fierce battle being fought on the ground. Just before he could comment on how unfair his missing out on the action was, the gunship rocked forward violently and the pilot spoke up. Sir, tail gunner is dead. We got a fighter on our 6. I'll try to evade. Nay belay that opened the side door. Naruto yelled back. Sir? The pilot questioned but did as was told. Naruto leaned out the gunship to see a lone droid fighter behind them. An idea in his head, he informed the pilot. You'll be getting fighter escort in but a moment, pilot. Keep flying and close the doors in 10 seconds. It was all Naruto said before leaping out of the gunship. Unknown to Naruto, however, the Twi'lek he saved woke just in time to see him jump out the gunship. If the droid fighter was more up to date, it would have tried evading the flying clone heading toward it, but as it was a cheap mass-produced droid, its intellect was severely lacking. So it was that something that only a Jedi would be able to do happened. Naruto, the crazy fool that he was, jumped out of a fast-flying gunship in a war zone, landed on a droid fighter craft. Barely managing to hold on, he punched through the cockpit of the fighter craft, grasped a handful of wire and stood atop the now commandeered fighter craft. Flying his new acquisition was a tad bit difficult, but he managed. Taking his ship on a fight escort approach with the gunship, he laughed with a touch of madness as he saw the pilot looking at him shocked. Using his free hand, he calmed the pilot, instructing him to keep going to the medical area and that he would keep any enemies of them. The Twi'lek Jedi who had woken and was currently watching the insane Commando fell back into unconsciousness as loss of adrenaline finally hit her and fatigue from her battle in the arena caught up to her. She would reawaken on a battlecruiser heading back towards Coruscant with questions regarding her savior. Naruto, however, would continue wreaking havoc across the battlefield after escorting the gunship to a medical area, earning a nickname from the other clones who had managed to glimpse him when he strafed the battlefield. Naruto would eventually catch up to his Jedi friend and his Padawan as they chased a lone figure. After shooting down 2 droid escorts, Naruto abandoned his vehicle and jumped down onto a platform to follow not only the lone figure but the 2 Jedi. He arrived to the site of Obi-Wan injured and Obi-Wan's Padawan losing his hand to a lightsaber strike and falling unconscious from the sudden pain. Making a small noise from his throat, he announced his appearance and drawed the attention of the now identified Sith Jedi being one of the things all clones learned. I would say it's a good day, Sith, but you just hurt my friend and his Padawan. So I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to surrender or face death, Naruto requested, picking up a lightsaber that he recognized as Obi-Wan's. You dare demand a Sith to surrender, a mere clone? The Sith angrily replies before continuing. You face Count Dooku, Lord Tyrannus of the Sith, and I am feeling a bit of pity towards 2 friends. So take them now or you'll all die by my hand. Naruto responded to this by turning the lightsaber on and rushing toward the Count. Count Dooku responded by using the Force to throw projectiles at the rushing clone to stop him, only for Naruto to dodge and get close enough to initiate in a fierce melee. Dooku was surprised by the blonde clone's ability to fight against him, and so he posed a question. Tell me, clone, how are you able to keep up against me? Most clones would have died the moment you rushed me. Hey, for an old man you sure can fight, but I'll humor you. I'm not a normal clone, I'm a commando. The commando? Naruto replied before forcing himself against Dooku again, only to falter as Dooku used the Force to push the clone's leg out from under him. Dooku capitalized on the opening and used the Force to push the blonde clone away from him. Naruto was sure he saw a little green man, but before he could think further he impacted against the wall and blacked out from the blow against his head. Naruto woke in a medical bay to the smiling face of his friend Obi-Wan. Hello there, good to see you awake, my friend. I wanted to thank you for not only saving both my life and Anakin's but also my fellow Jedi Knight Aayla Secura, the Twi'lek. She had internal bleeding and your actions with defending the gunship she was in was vital to her survival. I'm quite sure she'll want to thank you herself, but she is still resting. Now, other than that, you have been put in for a promotion, you're a captain now. Naruto was still out of it, but he understood the simple terms. Well, as long as everyone made it out all right or died with glory at the least, It's good to know you're okay, and I'm assuming your learner is okay as well. Naruto said. We lost a fair good few of Jedi and hundreds of clone troopers, but we won the first battle in the now dubbed Clone Wars, an ironic name but it fits in a way. Kenobi replied. He was about to inform the blonde commando of his new position in the army when he saw a question forming on his lips. The Sith, what happened after I was knocked out? Naruto asked, wanting to know. Count Dooku escaped unfortunately, but not after having a small fight with the Grand Master of the Jedi, Yoda. Your fight with Dooku exhausted him, and with your battle there was enough time for reinforcements to arrive. Unfortunately, Dooku still managed to escape. Kenobi informed the bedded clone, and then the door to the room opened. Yes. Good warrior you are, to hold against my old Padawan. Much might and ferocity I sense in you, I do. Kenobi informed Naruto that the new arrival was Jedi Grand Master Yoda. Request I have for you I do. With Obi-Wan you will stay with during the war. Special missions called away you will be over the course of the war. Sense I do that you are powerful. Instrument to the end of the war you will be. Yoda told Naruto in his Yoda speak. I can agree to that. It'll be nice causing mayhem for the Seps, cause I have one hell of a feeling that Obi-Wan's gonna be mostly in the thick of all the war. Naruto pondered. Indeed, powerful Obi-Wan is. Deployed the most he will be, alongside his Padawan. Yes. Unfortunate this war is. Much sorrow I can sense already. The clones begun they have, dark's day ahead for the Jedi and the Republic, there are. Yoda ominously spoke. Yoda said his farewell before leaving along with Obi-Wan leaving shortly after. And so it was that Naruto fell asleep due to boredom, that he saw a past life, and unknown to him his sleeping form was encompassed by a thick smoke that seemed to appear out of nowhere. No one would know what happened, and Naruto himself would wake with thoughts on a strange dream and feeling as if his body could withstand a full orbital bombardment. It felt strange being in a war. Despite being created for the purpose of war and the training he partook in, it finally set in that he was in a war. But the strange thing was that Naruto felt he had already been in a war, not counting that little rebellion on Commando of course. Oh well, thoughts for another day. 8 months it had been since the Clone Wars started. 8 months since the Battle of Geonosis, 8 months since Naruto the Clone Commando was introduced to full-out war. And right now you would think that he would be in massive battles waging across the stars, but not for this clone. Oh no, Naruto was, upon the cleanup of Geonosis, awarded for his valor and battle fury, and you would naturally think that he would be sent back into the fight. The higher-ups had different plans however, because when debriefing time came around the corner, Naruto was moved all around the galaxy where he was needed. Oh, he was still attached to Obi-Wan's regiment, but most of the time he was off doing highly classified, near suicidal missions for the Republic. Yes, it took its toll on Naruto and annoyed the literal crap out of his Jedi general whenever he was assigned a mission, but he did them nonetheless. Right now would be the perfect example. Not even back from a mission and he was already assigned another, this time instead of scouting out Count Dooku's home planet. Naruto was instructed to seek out a missing battlecruiser, and find out why it went missing, and if possible either return it to the Republic or destroy it. And he was definitely looking forward to destroying this damned ship. The reason being, was currently stumbling toward him. A clone trooper who had his helmet removed looked perfectly fine, if you count for the perfectly pitch-white eyes. Naruto had found out from the logs of the ship that this ship, the Lamentor, was assigned to Geonosis and had been recalled but was considered missing in action when the ship didn't appear in any Republic sector. Naruto found out why. Bugs from Geonosis, larvae, they looked like worms, to be exact, had somehow managed to infect the whole ship, and during the course of several weeks to months, the inhabitants of the ship had died from lack of food and water and so were literal walking corpses. Naruto could only guess why the worm-like larvae were still alive. They feasted on the body to supply their nutrients. So yeah, Naruto was eager to destroy this ship. Fun times. Using his combat knife, he stabbed towards the stumbling clone corpse's head, where Naruto had, after a rather gruesome introduction to the damn bugs, found that the brain was where the worms controlled the body. Yes, generic zombie death, it was all I could think of. The moment the body hit the floor, Naruto moved towards the generator room of the ship, his objective to plant explosive charges where upon arriving to the bridge of the ship, Naruto would then have the ship enter hyperspace and the explosives would detonate, literally wiping out the ship. All Naruto could think of was that this was all a waste of good genes. The mission to the bridge was anything but easy. The moment the charges were placed, the countdown began. He had to rush now, otherwise he himself would be nothing but space dust. So rushing to the bridge, evading if possible any of the stumbling corpses, taking what elevators worked and sometimes climbing, but he made it to the bridge only to slightly stumble at the sight that was within. Bodies were everywhere. They weren't moving, so Naruto had thought that they had either been killed either by whatever remnant of a defense was mustered at the bridge, or by each other. Not once did the thought they were hibernating occur within his mind. So moving towards the bridge controls, he unconsciously stepped where there was no limb or body. The moment he reached the controls, he swore an hour had passed by, but he couldn't dwell on those thoughts as he had a mission to do. The moment he started up a console, a loud beep went throughout the bridge. Flinching slightly, he turned quickly to see if anything was standing or coming towards him. Then he remembered the bodies were dead and unresponsive, so he turned back to the console. Not seeing several bodies start to wake up. Setting the ship to enter hyperspace took a tad longer than he thought it would. Each tap he made into the console echoing throughout the bridge, but he paid that no mind before finally, with an exaggerated final tap, was the ship starting up its sequence for entering hyperspace. Right now that's done, time for me haul it out of here, Naruto said to himself before turning around only to freeze at the sight that lay before him. What could only be counted as hundreds of white eyes stared eerily at him, and the dumbfounded clone then expressed himself in but a simple way. Oh shit. It was as if a switch had been turned on, as nearly every single body had rushed towards him. In an effort to save himself, Naruto jumped back and hoisted himself on top of the console that he was previously manhandling. Using his knife and pistol, since his rifle had broken on the way to the bridge, he gave himself a small brief amount of time to survey the area. Seeing not many options to escape, he looked down towards the stumbling corpses, and his eyes went from the many heads of fallen brothers to the door that led to the entrance of the ship, which was surprisingly clear of any hostiles. An idea popped into his head and he started to run and jump from head to head towards the door. He stumbled a few times due to his weight and whatever head he was on falling down, but overall he made it to the door, a pistol less, a boot gone, and his helmet almost falling off. Throwing a grenade into the room, he smashed his fist towards the door console, and a moment later the doorway leading to the bridge sealed itself shut and he heard a large explosion come from within. Apparently a few of the clones had a grenade pack on them. Rushing to the escape pod area, he evaded most of any bug-infested clones he came across, usually shouldering them out of the way. He ended up shedding his upper armor as he felt a small wiggling around his chest leading up towards his throat. Using his knife he cut away at the garment that revealed a small white worm making its way up to Naruto's neck, where it would try and enter Naruto's body from the mouth, nose, eyes or ears. Naruto didn't want to find out, so he cut the worm off his chest, leaving a small cut on skin due to how close the knife came, and he continued on. Making it to an escape pod became slightly more harder as some doors had closed shut, no doubt due to the explosion in the bridge. It didn't help that he had to check his body each time he came into contact with an infested clone. It was slow progress, but the timer was counting down and he got closer to his escape. He was lucky when he finally entered a pod, as the moment the pod hatch closed, he saw through the window several worms over the window glass. Pressing a button, the pod jettisoned away from the ship just in time for it to jump into hyperspace. The moment he saw it leave his sight, however, he saw it explode. The hyperspace jump and the explosion was timed perfectly. Well, now it was time for Naruto to send out a distress beacon and hope that Republic forces found him before the Seppies did. He knew his luck was cursed when a large shadow enveloped the pod, the shadow of a large ship, belonging to the Separatists. By whatever gods existed in the universe, whoever made this ship was surely compensating for something. Strangely enough, he wasn't shot on sight but was instead tractor beamed into one of the ship's hangar bays. No doubt whoever captained this ship was sent to get intelligence from the ship that Naruto had destroyed, and not because of his distress signal. Oh well, at least by the time he returns to the Republic, he'll have a nice big gift for the Chancellor. Naruto pondered on what to call this massive cruiser. It looked obviously new due to the lack of any scorching on the hull, and looking through the escape pod viewing window, he could see nary a starfighter in the hangar and what Naruto could call a skeleton crew maintaining the bay he was brought in. Well then, a new ship for the Republic and quite possibly a small holiday. Naruto was looking forward to it. So let me get this straight, you completed your objective. Eject yourself from a ship. How did that feel, by the way? Sent out a distress signal for the Republic to come retrieve you only for a large separatist ship of unknown design to be your rescuer. Forgive if I say this, but your report is slightly hard to believe, Naruto. Obi-Wan said aloud, giving those around them a small headache at the thought of it all. Yes, Sir General, Naruto replied, oddly serious at this time, mainly due to the presence of the Chancellor and his rather overbearing secretary dude whose name Naruto never bothered to remember. You, conveniently, left out what happened on your gift that is currently parked on top of the Senate building. Do relay to us what exactly happened, ordered the overbearing secretary dude, taking the question right out of the mouths of several people who wanted to ask the same question. With a small cough, Naruto slowly started to explain exactly what happened. Well, it happened like this. Well, this is quite the predicament, Naruto said, looking to his right as if there was a person there, only to realize that there was no one else on the escape pod with him, and so he looked quite like a fool in that moment. Luckily there was no one to see him make a fool of himself, as again there was no one else. Looming over his escape pod was a massive separatist ship. There was, if by Naruto's calculations, barely any bareness on the underside of the ship, as most of it was covered by both large and smaller turrets. Realizing that the ship was getting closer, he acknowledged the fact there was no chance for a Republic vessel to help out, resigning to the fate of taking over a fully blown battlecruiser with who knows how many battle droids on it. Regardless of a small section of his thoughts that were currently shouting out profanities of his bad luck, he readied himself to capture a ship, the humorously massive battle droid-infested cruiser crusher that is a gift for the Republic. Operation THMBDICCTIAGFTR. That's a rather long and completely nonsense name for an operation, so Naruto rethought the name and came up with Operation Big Gift. A very small portion of his thoughts were wondering why he wanted to capture this ship and give it to the Chancellor, but that small portion was squashed by his soldier-dominated thoughts that were dedicated to the Republic. He readied himself, and on his comm link that was on his wrist, which was linked to his helmet, he readied a finger over a small button that had an arrow pointing horizontally. On a previous mission to a small remote planet that was later deemed an unnecessary planet for the Republic, Naruto picked up an old-time music storage device. It took a small while to get it refitted with more modern technologies, and most of the songs that were on it were destroyed during the process, but Naruto quite enjoyed what music was left. It just felt right for him in certain situations that he found himself in. As the escape pod finally dropped to the hangar floor, and pressed the button, and soft music started to play on his helmet speakers, it was timed perfectly. As the moment the escape pod's door was opened, hardcore rock music started to blast aloud, very in tune with Naruto's slaughter of droids. For those who haven't gotten it yet, equals doom. It didn't take long for the hangar to be completely covered in the remains of droids, but it also didn't take long for the ship's crew to retaliate with force, as not even a moment later, after catching a small breeze, the doors leading to the hangar were opened, allowing droids to pour in. Naruto only grinned at the challenge. Unknown to the slightly battled, crazed Commando, up on the bridge, the captain of the THMBDICCTI. The cruiser was slightly starting to panic, for he was watching a live feed of the machine slaughter. Captain, shall we increase ship defense output by 18%? A battle droid asked the captain. Getting only a small nod in return, the droid returned to his task and went about increasing the defense output by 18%, something that would add more droids to the slaughter. The captain of the ship turned away from the live feed, no longer looking at a crazed clone who had just taken the head of a battle droid and was holding over his helmet and letting whatever liquid that ran fueled the droids run down. It didn't help that the clone was laughing and had what sounded like really cruel music playing that seemed to be so in tune with his movements. Pressing a button on his arm rest of the chair he was sitting in, a hologram appeared in front of him, revealing a cloaked figure. Captain Drosh Riwaden. Unexpected surprise. Tell me, why is it that I have been informed by my fleet's admiral that the ship you are currently captaining has gone off its course? Might I remind you that the ship you are commanding is to be a surprise for the Republic? The cloaked figure demanded. The now named Drosh Ri stammered out a reply, barely able to, due to his hands clawing at invisible hands around his throat. He was glad to be able to take in a gulp of air and hurried out an excuse. My lord, please. We were en route to our destination, but we picked up a distress signal from a nearby system, a Republic distress signal. I took the initiative to seize what I had thought to be a possible hostage. But Drosh Ree slowly trailed off as his eyes went back to the live feed of the clone that was now slamming two droids together. "What is it, you incompetent slime? I'll show you, my lord." Drosh Ree yelled out in fright, practically clawing his chair's buttons to transmit the live feed to the cloaked figure. With a small prodding by his master, Drosh Ree finally managed to press the right button, and the cloaked figure was now viewing the scene of a clone tearing a super battle droid apart limb by limb. "I know of this clone," the figure said after watching for but a few seconds before turning back to the captain. "You are hopelessly outnumbered against this clone. He is literally a walking calamity for his enemies. There is nothing you can do. My master will not be pleased if this ship does not reach the testing system, and if my master is not pleased, then you can very well be assured that you will wish you were sucked into the vacuum of space." The cloaked figure informed the captain. "I'll order the ship into hyperspace towards separatist-controlled systems. This clone will be overwhelmed by the countless amount of droids we will throw at him. He will surely falter from." "Silent fool. The moment you let that clone onto this ship, you doomed it to be captured. I don't know if you realized it or if you have forgotten, but that clone is capable of taking out an entire fleet of ships by himself." The cloaked figure yelled at Drosh Ree, who cringed in fear. "You will do your utmost best to kill or capture this clone, or you will die either by the hand of this clone, or if you somehow manage beyond all possible belief to escape, then you will surely be executed by my own hands," the cloaked figure said before cutting off the hologram. The captain sunk into his seat, utterly spent from that ordeal. Thinking for a moment, Drosh Ree came to a decision. "Lieutenant, you are hereby in command of this vessel. I am quite certain that you will make our masters proud." The droid lieutenant looked about as shocked as a droid could possibly be. But before the newly crowned captain could voice any words, the former captain made his escape through the bridge door towards the escape pods. "Congratulations, sir, on your promotion. I think I voiced the modulated words of encouragement and congratulations for every droid here on your behalf." "What are your first orders?" a droid spoke up. "Enter us into hyperspace, navigator," the now droid captain exaggeratedly commanded. "It will take 2 hours for the hyperdrive to reset and start up again, sir," the droid that was in charge of the hyperdrive informed the captain. "Oh," was all the droid captain said. Back somewhere in the middle of the ship, Naruto had managed to fight his way to the very heart of the ship, where all that was everything in the ship was transported to separate parts of the ship. "Hey, that looks like a part for an engine," Naruto asked a droid, allowing it only the chance to glance at the part that Naruto pointed out, before its head was removed. "Stupid droids, so gullible. That wasn't an engine part, that was an old droid I destroyed just before." "Oh hey, that's an engine part, I'll follow it to the engine room," Naruto excitedly said before jumping off the tram that he was onto the tram that had the engine part. The remaining droids that Naruto left behind, which could be counted on one hand, lamely emulated their captain. Jumping on the tram might not have been the best of ideas, but it got the job done, and even better, a spider droid gratefully broke his fall. Striking up a good jog, Naruto made his way to the engine room. Privately, Naruto thought that he wouldn't be placing into his report that he cleared out several rooms along the way and that he had been going in the wrong direction, which he found out after slicing into a terminal he found. After correcting his course and making his way to the engine room, Naruto cleared out the entire room of droids and planted a single high-explosive device and sealed the entire room shut. The reason he planted a bomb was a precaution in the case of any droids get the funny idea of taking control of the ship from the engine room or destroying it themselves when Naruto took over the ship. Naruto then, after checking the map of the ship that he downloaded from the terminal he found earlier, made his way to the bridge, destroying droids along the way and whistling a small cheery tune. Obi-Wan's hand met his face as he did a classical face palm. Giving a small, barely heard sigh, he asked Naruto a small, simple question that everyone in the room of the Chancellor's office was wanting to ask. "Please be serious when you're making your reports, Naruto. It's quite childish when you go on about your stories and missions that you always exaggerate." "But I am being serious, Obi-Wan. I mean, General. Everything I have said so far has been the truth. I even added in the conversation the previous captain had with that cloaked fellow that I managed to slice out of the bridge computers. Even the bomb I placed in the engine room was." He was cut off as the ship outside of the senator's building blew up in a great ball of fire. "Real," Naruto lamely finished. looking dumbly at the ship that he had spent an untold amount of ammunition on, go up in flames. "The bomb that I kinda forgot was there," Naruto finished his own statement off. Everyone in the room just looked at the now destroyed ship as alarms and sirens went off all throughout the building and surrounding areas. New experience, this is for me. New advice to give to the younglings I have. Yes, don't press red buttons. A small green life form spoke up, holding in its hands a wrist bracer that had many buttons on it, one of those buttons being a larger than normal red button. Everyone looked at the small green man, shocked that the currently oldest and most wisest Jedi had just unknowingly destroyed a possible treasure trove of separatist information and quite possibly caused the deaths of hundreds if not thousands of people on Coruscant. "How in the hells did you get my bracer?" Naruto couldn't help but ask, causing the small green life form to look at him. "Loose it was, fell off it did. Picked it up I did. Saw big red button, yes, drew my eyes it did," the small green life form replied. A small cough drew everyone's attention to the Chancellor. "I think in light of recent events, we don't need your report, Commando Naruto. However, in recognition of your heroic services to the Republic, you are to be honored." Which you, in a statement released for the media, declined in favor of helping clean up the sabotaged ship that blew up, which was considered to be a gift from the Separatists in hopes of furthering diplomatic relations, and that the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, Yoda, was so stricken by grief for the potential loss of life that came to be by the explosion and debris of the sabotaged ship, immediately went about also helping to clean up the destruction wrought by the debris of that ship. The Chancellor spoke aloud, informed really of the punishments that was to be given to the two. Naruto looked down like a kicked puppy while Yoda, "Unfair, this is his fault, not mine." Yoda defiantly spoke in his Yoda speak. A group of guards approached the two, splitting off into two groups, one going for Naruto and the other for Yoda, shuffling Naruto along. The guards went about manhandling Yoda out of the office. Luckily Mace Windu, who was also in the office, secretly used the Force to retrieve Yoda's lightsaber, just in case. "Well, that happened," Obi-Wan plainly said. "Well then, now that that is out of the way, how goes the defense for the Corellian hyperspace lanes? It is imperative we keep our allies' hyperspace lanes guarded." The Chancellor started a new conversation. Outside in the wreckage of the blown-up ship, Naruto and Yoda, wearing construction uniforms, went about cleaning up the debris and rubble that they both caused. Luckily there were no deaths, but there were some civilians who had to be taken to a hospital for serious surgery. Again, I say unfair, this is," Yoda grumbled in his shrunk construction uniform as he went about using the Force to lift a large piece of the ship off a destroyed speeder. Yeah, I heard the first time, short stack," Naruto grumpily replied as he went over to the speeder to check if there was anyone in it. Turning back to Yoda after confirming there was no one in it, he spoke. "Let's just get this over with. The sooner we finish this, the sooner I can get drunk." Agree to that plan. "I do. Many years it has been since I have gotten drunk, as you young people say." Naruto looked weirdly at Yoda, trying to imagine a drunk Yoda. He didn't like the image, but he also couldn't help but laugh. An explosion rocked his bunk, throwing him out of his sleep, grumbling slightly at his short sleep. CCT 333, Maelstrom, or Naruto as he requested people call him, got up from the floor only to be thrown back down as an explosion rocked the ship. "Sanuva bitch, stupid droids, stupid war, stupid starships that don't have technology to stop people falling over because of explosions. Sigh. Better get going to do what I can," Naruto told himself, but just as he was about to equip his gear, the blast door to his room opened, revealing another clone trooper donned in pure white armor, a sign of recently graduating from training. The trooper saluted and went about explaining the situation to Naruto. "Sir, hostile forces dropped out of hyperspace only a few minutes ago, after their initial salvo of weapons. Last report over the ship's intercom was to brace for hostiles boarding the ship. I brought an extra energy pack for you, sir." The new unknown clone informed Naruto, who had been putting his armor on and taking stock of his weapons stock. "Good work, trooper. What's your name, Shiny? Oh, and was there any objectives for me from the higher-ups?" Naruto asked as he picked up his main blaster rifle and stood in a relaxed position. To the Shiny, however, the position Naruto was taking just instilled nervousness to flood his system. Standing before this recently graduated clone trooper was a battle-hardened droid killer, and if the rumors were to be believed, a literal single-man army capable of taking out an entire fleet by himself. No sir, not yet at least, the clone replied, and as if it was fate, the comm on Naruto's wrist went off. Opening the channel, he heard the voice of his current commander. Naruto, I need you on the bridge ASAP. We got droids advancing on our position and 2 Jedi aren't going to be able to hold them all off in such an enclosed space with a large amount of possible causalities. The best we can do right now is to seal the blast doors. So hurry. A female voice rang out through the room. Right, come on Shiny, let's get you some droids to add on your kill score was all Naruto said before rushing out the room, only to rush back in with blaster fire following him. Right, not that way too many even for me, hehe. Come on, we're going up, Naruto said as he fused the blast door closed with his blaster, before taking out a thermal charge and jumping up to place it on the ceiling of the room. Giving the Shiny a forceful and slightly panicked command to take cover with what he could find, Naruto went off to also cover himself as well as he could. As the seconds went by, Naruto felt like an age had gone past. A large explosion engulfed the room, luckily only injuring Naruto on his arm. The reason why Naruto blew up the ceiling was because of the fact that there was another room above and below the room that Naruto was in. Regaining his bearings, he looked to the fresh clone who had yet to give his name, a matter for later however. Come on rookie, up we go, Naruto told him as he jumped up to grasp the ceiling that opened up. Letting go with one hand, he leaned as far as he could to give a hand for the Shiny recruit to grab hold of. The rookie clone took the hand and was hoisted up to the next floor, followed closely by Naruto. When they were standing fully in the newly decorated room, Naruto threw the second of his 3 thermal grenades, leaving him with only one left to spare. He didn't worry about that though, he was too immersed in listening to the droids that had entered what was previously the room he was in before, only for them to shout their worries and frantic shouts to get out as the thermal grenade dropped to the floor at their metal feet and blow up. Their frantic screams to survive was a blessing on Naruto's ear. Right now that is done and over, come over here and we'll decide on a course of action to get to the bridge. Here's my plan. First we'll leave this room, head towards the hangar bay, hijack an enemy ship if there is one. If not, we'll take one of our drop ships, board the enemy ship. Wipe out all droids on their flagship. Take control of it to manually input new commands so that it fires on its fellow ships. In the process we'll capture the flagship captain, hightail it out of there, return to this ship, and then make our way up to the command deck, also wiping out any droids we come across, saving the hairs of our fellow clones. Further my awesome reputation and get yours to a level that will have other clones think you are an ARC trooper. Save the command deck from certain doom, get a kiss on the cheek for my awesome plan by our deliciously wide general, he. Cough. And then go about our patrol route. Naruto finished off his plan with a stoic pose and a twinkling smile, casually ignoring his own words that no doubt would have sent him back to Commando for disciplinary actions. The Shiny just looked lost, turning away from the now obviously crazed clone. The unnamed clone turned to the map that Naruto had pulled out, somehow showing a small hologram of the full space battle. Ignoring how that was possible, he gave out his plan. Sir, no disrespect to your well-thought-out plan, but would it not be easier to just make our way to the command deck, take a droid we encounter on our way up there, save the command deck, then use some slicing skills to hack into the enemy flagship through whatever droid we take with us, and force the flagship and possibly the other enemy ships to fly into the planet below us, for example? Naruto knew his plan was a sham, but it was doable if it was just him. If he took this rookie clone with him to hijack the enemy flagship, there was a very, very high chance of them both dying. So he went over the plan that the clone gave. Note, ask clone for his name again, and decided that it was the better of the two plans. Alright, let's go with your plan. Now we are here in the ship. At this he points to a section of the ship that was now beeping, marking their location. And we need to get here. The view of the map changes to where the command deck is on the ship there we're on, an acclamator if you're wondering. We need to go from here to there. We'll nab a droid when we are closer to the command deck, but at the moment our main priority is to get there alive. If we can, we'll take what other clones we find with us as well. Before we go, however, what is your name, trooper? Naruto said, asking his question in a serious manner that completely threw off the clone. Sir, I don't have a name but a designation number, Quart 662736. Clones aren't given names, sir, Quart 662736 replied to Naruto, who was currently humming as if in thought, which he was. Well, that won't do, will it, CT 662736? You know what I'm going to start calling you now, Kurama? Naruto announced, rather proud of himself, even though he felt a weird feeling spread throughout him as he said that name. It was as if that word "no," the name Kurama, was special to him. Bah, he thought to himself, thoughts for another day. Now let's move out, Kurama, we got some Jedi to save, no? Was all Naruto said before leaving the room they had blown up into. Kurama rushed after him with his blaster raised, alert and combat ready. Now shiny, true combat is no way like the simulations, trust me on that. I've seen fellow brothers say it's like the simulation after shooting a droid only to get popped in the head, or blown up by artillery. Trust me when I say this, in combat it is kill or be killed, whether it's against a droid or a living being. You either shoot and kill your target or you get shot and die. Naruto gave a small bit of wisdom to Kurama, turning his head only slightly to look at him. Now let's get going and get us some droid kills, Naruto shouted aloud, conveniently giving their position away to a super battle droid patrol. Let's move, Naruto shouted, as he charged forth to the command deck, which was currently being sliced into by several droids that had both super battle droids and droidekas guarding them, or rollies as they were affectionately named by other clones who encountered them. Feeling and seeing a rocket blast pass him, he thought back to how he and Kurama had saved a small group of clones that were defending the corridors of the ship. Luckily one of those clones had a rocket launcher on him at the time of the battle. Sprinting forward, along with a few other clones beside him, Naruto rushed into the group of droids that had clambered away from the sealed door to get their weapons, wreaking havoc upon said droids. He alongside the other clones completely demolished the droids. Pointing his weapon at a grunt droid, the normal B1 droid, he gave a small growl and with a small gesture towards the droid's weapon, it surrendered. With a small parting word of "good droid," Naruto proceeded to give the clones around him and the clones that had stayed behind to cover their rear but also take pot shots at the droids they charged, the orders to set up a small defensive perimeter around the bridge entrance. Seeing the clones moving about, he knocked his fist on the bridge door and announced himself, casually pressing buttons on his comlink in a way towards the Jedi he was serving under. In but a few seconds the blast door receded and the bridge opened up. Pushing his captured droid into the bridge, he handed it over to an unfortunate clone that was conveniently close by giving him orders to begin setting up the slicing part of the plan. Walking towards the actual deck of the bridge, revealed the utter chaos that was outside of the ship. Taking his helm off, he walked up to the Jedi that was overseeing the battle. "Hey there," Naruto said softly enough for the female to hear but not loud enough for those around him too. He would have said more but was forced to close his eyes as a clone fighter was shot down by a droid gunship just outside of the bridge. Giving a small growl, he turned to the female. "This battle has been going on for long enough. My original plan when you called me to get here was to hijack their flagship but decided not to. Well, now I am." Naruto was about to turn when the female Jedi spoke her oh so alluring voice. "Don't we have already received word that reinforcements are about to drop out of hyperspace? We just need to hold them off for a bit longer, that's all. Naruto, stay here." She turned, her hood covering her face revealed a Twi'lek face. Ayla Sakura was a very beautiful woman, and since their meeting on Geonosis, she had gained a small scar that only added to her beauty. How she asked him to stay reminded him that this battle was her first proper major battle that she was in command of. She only was released from the Jedi medical bay a shy few months beforehand. Naruto thought to himself once again, that even Jedi are capable of being afraid of things. Despite being taught how to control their emotions, a simple thing like leading a full battle regiment could cause them fear of failing if it was something that they had never done before. Such was the case now with Ayla. This battle was her first official engagement in the war, the first time she would lead a battle. And so he stayed, because he knew Ayla needed the support of her most trusted friend even if he didn't say much about her fear. "Of course, I'll give aid where I can from here then. If you need me just give a holler, okay?" Surprisingly soft even for Naruto. He looked around the bridge, finding the droid he left with a clone being connected to a terminal, making his way there. He proceeded to give the bridge officer clone a good pat on the back and told him, politely, to get out of the way as he went about hacking into the droid's mainframe. A simple thing. Surprisingly, one would think that you would not have droids that have been assigned to bridge work sent into battle. One would never know if the enemy was smart enough to do what Naruto was doing now. In the few short minutes that Naruto had been on the bridge, he had already gotten access to the ship's bridge. How? Don't ask. Giving a yell for Ayla to have a chat with the droid commander, he opened up communications with the enemy flagship. Ayla, being the commander for the clone's fleet, started their conversation. "Droid Captain, I am Ayla Secura, Jedi Knight of the Republic and commander of the fleet you are attacking. You are surrounded. In but a few seconds you will have 2 Republic fleets to contend with. 1 fleet behind you, 1 in front. You have only 2 options now. Option 1 is for your unconditional surrender. You and any other non-droid personnel will be treated with respect and dignity deserving of your station until you are processed back on Coruscant. Option 2 is your..." She was cut off by Naruto taking the screen. "Your complete and utter annihilation. Nothing will remain of your fleet, nothing." Now one must understand is that during the process of the war, Naruto had made a name for himself. With how Naruto was, it was inevitable, so when the captain of the droid fleet saw Naruto take up his viewing screen, he rightly shat himself. I surrender, please don't let him near me, please. I've heard all about his exploits, don't let him near me. I fully surrender." Just in time too, as the fleet that was sent as reinforcements had dropped out of hyperspace. "Very well, your droids are to be shut down immediately and you will present yourself in your flagship's main hangar for a clone transport to take you prisoner. And if you don't follow these instructions, then I will have this clone be the only person to pick you up." Ayla ordered, threatened the enemy captain. With the communications turned off, Ayla ordered a squad to be round up and sent to pick up the captain. When this was done, she gave a pointed stare at Naruto. Naruto saw this stare and slightly shivered from it. He messed up somewhere and he was going to pay for it. "I'm sorry?" Lamely put, but it did Naruto nothing as Ayla said the 2 words any soldier feared. "Latrine duty. What? What for?" He whined. That was a horrible punishment for something he didn't even know he did. "For interrupting the negotiations, though you did help, so you will only clean the latrines for the officer's deck," Ayla informed him. To his joy, the officer's deck only comprised of around 25 officers, but the best thing about that was the all-Jedi bunks were situated within the officer's deck. If he planned his cleaning right, he could visit Ayla last. He silently giggled, perversely earning a queer look from those that heard him, which he ignored. "Very well, I accept that punishment, though I do believe I will need a shower last when I am done." The way he said this made others think he was thinking of getting a shower in whatever officer's room he cleans last, not knowing that it would be Ayla's room he would clean. He. "I shall get to it then." Before marching off, Naruto gave a hidden look that only Ayla saw. A small nod was sent back, barely noticeable, but Naruto saw it. Sometime later, after enduring the remains of the celebratory spicy dinner held by the officers for the victory over the first official win for Ayla Secura's battle fleet, he finally ended up in Ayla's room, being greeted with a still-dressed Twi'lek that was cross-referencing something on 2 data pads. He announced his presence but was given a small arm gesture pointing towards her faculties. A small sigh escaped him, but as he went to her toiletries he heard her mumble that he should refresh himself when he was done cleaning. A small giggle escaped him, heard by the Twi'lek, who only rolled her eyes at the immature clone Commando. Within a few minutes, Naruto had cleaned what needed to be cleaned, and had taken another few minutes to refresh himself, for what he hoped would be a pleasant evening. A conversation would however take place before anything happened, much to Naruto's dismay. "Those datapads I was looking at contained the rules and laws for the Jedi Order. I couldn't find anything that would allow us to be open in our relationship. The Jedi Order is my home. If we fully go through with our relationship, I would be breaking so many oaths and so many rules. I would be exiled if it were ever found out." Try as she might, Ayla could not control her emotions, and Naruto could feel the turmoil within her, somehow. So he gently pulled her into a soft hug, and whispered, "If you want this to end, I am perfectly fine with that. Just so long as I can call you friend, I would be perfectly happy. I myself don't know what I would do if I was taken out of the GAR. I would be lost, I think, straying wherever my feet took me. So if you want what we have going now to end, I am perfectly fine with that. Just as I said, so long as we remain friends." Simple words spoken like a true friend towards a friend in need. Naruto knew that if Ayla valued the Jedi Order more than their relationship, she would break what they have off and remain as friends, while if this happened he would be sad. He could still be happy knowing that his friend, his love, would be safe and happy with where she belonged. Ayla took his words into thought. She sensed the sadness within Naruto when he spoke of their relationship being broken off, but she also felt deeper that he would be truly happy if she was happy whichever choice she made. A small alarm, however, went out near her bedside where she had placed her datapads. Giving a small smile to Naruto, she moved away from him and picked up the datapad that was currently sending out small alarms. Checking what had apparently set it off, her smile went from relaxed to alarmed as she read what was on the datapad. This is not good. Naruto, ready yourself and get the fleet ready to move and combat ready. We are being sent to reinforce Master Windu's fleet above Megiddo. They were ambushed and taking losses. There is already a fleet moving to help, but we were ordered to move and reinforce as well, she informed Naruto in a very alarmed tone. Both knew that Master Mace Windu was essential to the Republic. He was one of the key figureheads of the Jedi Order, someone to look up to, and he was a good military commander. Right, the fleet will be ready to move in an hour, Naruto spoke as he moved towards the doorway of Ayla's room. He stopped, however, to look back. I would like an answer soon though, but I can wait, but don't wait too long, who knows what will happen. Naruto softly spoke to Ayla, referring back to what they were talking about before the datapad went off. He turned and ran out the door to get the ship ready. Despite being just a clone commando, the bridge crew of Ayla's flagship knew to take orders from Naruto if it ever called for it. Now would be the perfect example. Ayla arrived onto the bridge a few minutes after Naruto had left her room, and saw that the bridge was as active as a Minox nest whenever it was time to reproduce. She walked to the direct front of the bridge. With a simple command, opened a frequency channel to all ships under her command. Soldiers, I apologize for doing this, but your well-deserved rest is to be cut short. We have been given orders to reinforce Mace Windu's fleet above Megiddo. I want everyone combat ready by the time we leave for hyperspace. That is all. Simple and short, but it got the message across to her fleet. Already the ships near her were turning and readying their engines and hyperdrives. Within an hour since she got her new orders, the fleet under the command of Ayla Secura was entering hyperspace and heading full steam towards Megiddo to help end the attack on Mace Windu's fleet. It would be after the upcoming battle that Naruto would receive his answer from Ayla, an answer that would either shatter Naruto or make him the happiest he would ever be. However, only time would reveal that answer, because as the fleet got closer to Mace's position, Naruto would remember how he and Ayla started their relationship. Of course, he would have this flashback after he got completely wasted with his new clone buddy Kurama. And after both served out their punishment for completely trashing not only the hangar bay but also two barracks, a medical bay, put slime on the floor leading directly into the bridge, and a whole lot of other pranks that would cause both humor and stress to those around them. Mace Windu knew something was off the moment he was informed of his mission. Despite being on a patrolling operation alongside another fleet that was damaged from a small skirmish before Mace and his fleet showed up. The patrol went swimmingly well, with the other fleet being reinforced halfway through the patrol. The mission that was assigned to Mace was to head directly for the planet of Megiddo. Upon arrival, further instructions would be given. That alone caused worry and suspicion to spring up in Mace's thoughts. Calming himself from those thoughts, however, he ordered his fleet to Megiddo. Expecting either a damaged and broken friendly cruiser to be expecting aid to even expecting a small skirmish against the droids. Not once did the thought that the Sis would send two droids fleets to capture Megiddo. His fleet was ambushed quite efficiently for droids, Mace idly thought as he sent out his commands for the officers to carry out. With his fleet being mobilized to defend against the two enemy fleets, Mace reluctantly sent out a distress signal and ordered one of his communication officers to call for help. Mace was a proud man capable of fighting his own battles, but he wasn't prideful enough to not call for help against an enemy force that was currently pulling off a perfect pincer maneuver. As he shouted out orders, he faintly heard from one of his senior communication officers that a fleet was on its way. Now he just had to hold out long enough for reinforcements, silently cursing the droid's commander. Hyperspace Our favorite blonde clone commando was currently standing on the bridge of Ayla's flagship, watching as the fleet flew through hyperspace, other than the small talk of officers and other bridge personnel, and the steps of those walking. Silent, Naruto thought to himself, it's so silent, so peaceful. It feels nice. His thoughts were interrupted by the warning shout of the clone watching over the hyperspace route for the flagship. We're 10 minutes out from exiting hyperspace. Within a second of the shout, the bridge was in a flurry. Naruto himself was on the move, heading directly to Ayla's quarters. It was his turn to stand watch on the bridge. It took him 2 minutes to get to her quarters. Entering, he saw the female Jedi asleep on her bed. If Naruto was surprised that Ayla was asleep and not awake before he entered, then he chalked it up to Ayla's force mumbo-jumbo being familiar with this presence. Gently shaking her awake, Naruto went about getting the necessary things for Ayla to wake up properly, not going anywhere near her clothes. However, he didn't have a death wish. With an idle thought of Ayla being cute as she woke up, Naruto gave her some CAF. A drink that would no doubt wake her up. Another idle though strayed through his mind. It's coffee, not CAF. Within a total of 8 minutes the Commando and Jedi were on the bridge. Report. Ayla ordered. General, our fleet will be exiting hyperspace momentarily. Our fighters are currently prepping for combat along with transports for boarding actions. We've gotten word from the other ships that their forces are mobilizing and they have their shield operators ready the moment we exit hyperspace. We ourselves have done so as well. A bridge officer relayed to the now serious Jedi General. General, we received a report while you were being sent for from General Windu's fleet. The report is as follows. Heavy damage to the Endurance but still operating. 2 of the 10 acclamators remain in the fight. 1 of the 4 Venators remain in the fight but their engines are damaged. The 2 Pelta-class frigates that was sent to resupply have been destroyed. Ma'am, it's not looking good. Another officer reported grimly, knowing full well that many of his brothers had died. Ayla looked shocked at the damage report sent from Mace's fleet. A hand on her shoulder put her back in the moment. Nodding to Naruto, who released her shoulder, she gave her orders. The moment we exit hyperspace, send a burst of our turbo lasers. Take the time to aim as well. Our sudden appearance should give a brief lull in the battle. During that time send orders to Windu's fleet to retreat to our position. We will cover them as pull back to us. Our initial burst should disorient the enemy, but I believe that they will recover quickly, so when the droids start firing back or when what's left of Mace's fleet start towards us, open fire. I want groups of our fleet to target single ships, then move on when the target is confirmed destroyed. Have our fighters orbit around our fleet, and when Mace's fleet are closer to us, have our fighters guard them from the enemy fighters. More orders will be sent out soon. Ayla ordered. Naruto thought that for her first real space battle, it was a sound plan for a beginner. The sudden surprise along with the sudden appearance of a burst of turbo lasers should hold the droids' ships for a small time, during which Mace Windu's fleet would try and hightail out of there. Mace's remaining Venator would take a very high risk due to their engine problems, but Naruto hopes that they make it. With the lull in the battle, the clones operating the turbo lasers would take the time to aim at droid ships and take the time to fire if the droids started firing or when Mace's fleet started to move. With Ayla's order of having groups of her own fleet targeting single ships, the onslaught of such a tactic would destroy the droid ships targeted quite quickly. Although Naruto might have been able to think up a better plan, I am not a good tactician or writer, typer when it comes to making plans and such. This would have to do. With a yell from another officer announcing the fleet's exit from hyperspace, Naruto readied himself for battle. Feeling and seeing the exit from hyperspace, Naruto saw the battle and could tell that if Ayla's initial burst of turbolasers didn't work as planned, then no doubt the plan would fail. There was a multitude of droid ships near Mace's fleet. Appearance-wise, from a spectator or from someone in the fleet being fired upon, it would appear to be 2 full fleets, but it would appear that the report of false or the information supplied was misleading, as Naruto instantly saw that the droid fleet was mainly comprising of Munificent-class frigates along with Providence-class destroyers that Naruto could count on a single hand spread out amongst the Munificent frigates. He felt and then saw the literal line of turbo lasers being fired at the enemy ships, and luckily there was a lull in the battle. No action was taken by the droid fleet, but that small amount of time was enough for orders to be sent from Ayla's flagship to Mace's, and it wasn't long before Mace's fleet made its retreat, with the sole Venator surprisingly staying behind and firing at random droid ships. A self-sacrifice. With Mace Windu's Venator providing a cover fire to the retreating ships, Ayla's own fleet of ships started their battery against the droid fleet. One by one droid ships started to explode from the onslaught of Republic turbo lasers. The self-sacrificing Venator ended up being destroyed, but not before taking out several Munificents and setting what engines it still had towards a collision with a Providence-class destroyer. With the destruction of what appeared to be the main flagship of the droid fleet, Naruto sent a mental thanks to those who were on the Venator who sent themselves on the collision course with said droid flagship. Time was no longer in the droids' favor. With the destruction of their flagship, they were all in disarray. The captains of each ship, without proper orders, started to stray away from their original positions, either to charge forward or to retreat. The tide of the battle was turning to the Republic's favor. It wasn't long before the remaining fleet of Mace Windu was within the safe hold of Ayla's fleet. With the battle almost over, it turned into a cleanup job. Any surviving droid warships had either fled or were being systematically destroyed. And as the cleanup was in progress, Mace, along with some of his officers and clones, were invited to the bridge of Ayla's flagship, where medical treatment was offered but declined, as surprisingly none of those who tagged along with Mace were injured. Although Ayla did send some of her medical personnel aboard the very few ships that were Mace Windu's fleet. Standing next to Ayla Secura, Mace relayed about what had happened, while a holocom connection was being broadcast to the Jedi Order. The attack was sudden. Initially we had thought that it was only a single fleet that had engaged us, but we were blindsided by the suddenness of the attack, allowing another fleet to drop out of hyperspace and engage us. We were taken by surprise, and my actions caused the loss of a lot of good soldiers today. When I return to the temple, I will be entering a meditation journey. This battle has affected me, Mace said to those present, both next to him and those listening on the holo. Master Windu, you could not have foreseen what happened. Droids are surprisingly capable of surprising their enemies. But even they aren't capable of sudden surprises. Young Ayla's appearance, along with the Venator that sacrificed itself, which in turn not only allowed you to safely retreat but also take out the head of their fleets. The man, with whom had a large, top head, who was speaking, was cut off by Naruto speaking up. It was a single fleet, not two. Naruto spoke up, interrupting the Jedi on the holo. It was silent, and Naruto realized that he had interrupted. Sorry for interrupting, but if I may. Naruto trailed off, asking for permission to speak his mind. The Jedi that he had interrupted was about to speak, but another voice did so. Speak you may. Thoughts on the matter you have? A familiar voice sounded out from the holo. Master Yoda, thank you. In regards to what you said, it was only a single fleet, Naruto spoke up. Moving forward, he brought up an overview on the holo that resembled the battle. As you can see, most of the droid fleet was made up of only Munificent-class ships, with only 4 to 5 Providence-class ships. As you should all know, a single droid fleet has around only 2 to 3 Providence-class ships. Sometimes even only 1, with the rest of the makeup of that droid fleet being smaller craft, frigates for example. Naruto explained, drawing the attention of all listening. Now we have had reports, scouting and after action, that some fleets are not the same size. That was my first thought when I first saw the droid fleet, too many frigates with too little destroyers. I believe that whoever the fleet captain was for the droid fleet, here it believed in the term quantity over quality. Naruto told those listening, this also means that the CIS are capable of establishing fleets of varying sizes. I don't believe they would create an overly large fleet number in the high hundreds, but with several fleets of different sizes they would be capable of doing practically anything in this war. Intercepting patrols, medical runs, etc. If they have a large number of fleets, regardless of the size, they could very well overwhelm our own fleets. Everyone was silent. That is troubling to hear, Mace said aloud. Plans we must make, counter this potential threat we must, Yoda said in his Yoda speech. People, the Jedi Council started to murmur plans, ideas, even general thoughts with each other. A cough drew the attention to the blonde-haired clone. Even if we create a plan, we would still have to present it to the Chancellor, perhaps even the Senate, and if that is the case, we would need to have substantial evidence so that they do not just sweep this all aside. Naruto informed them, he served the Republic with his life. But he for some reason was starting to feel something strange regarding the Chancellor and the war. He kept those thoughts to himself, however, don't want to be branded a traitor after all. Several of the Jedi nodded at his statement. You would be correct in what you say, Commander. Without evidence we would not be able to properly warn the Senate or the Chancellor. They would no doubt label all of this just some false reports from the CIS. Mace spoke, agreeing with the clone commando. Between us we must keep this knowledge. Make plans in secret, afraid we must. Warn no one, shall we, Yoda? Yoda. Naruto nodded to himself, agreeing with the green little Jedi Master. Until we have evidence, or if the droids do attack as we believe they will, we must keep this information completely classified between all of us here. We don't want to tip off the CIS, or in the case that they haven't even thought of it, give them ideas. But regardless of this, there is a war going on and we cannot afford to waste time. I will be putting out discreet inquiries to any such information. Get some information or something. Naruto turned to Ayla. I believe that is all we have to report. Ayla, agreeing with Naruto, spoke up to get the attention of the Jedi on the hollow. With that, masters, I believe we should be on our way back to Coruscant. Master Windu and his men do need to be checked over medically. Ayla told the council, with all agreeing that the conversation was finished. Turning the hollow off, Ayla then went about making sure that Mace and his men got settled in on her flagship. She did ask what was to be done about what remained of his fleet, but he assured her that his flagship would be fine to make the jump to a Republic-secured shipyard. With them disappearing from the bridge, Naruto remained staring out of the bridge window, thinking on how the war will go in the future. Hearing his personal holocom start beeping, he pulled it out and a static-filled blue image of a cloth-covered figure appear. In a disguised voice the person spoke, "Go to Moraband, static, ND the tomb, static, brace your past, static, read the scroll," and with that the image disappeared, his holocom turning off by itself. Naruto stood there on the bridge, perplexed on what he just heard. Turning away from the empty void that he saw from his window on the bridge, Naruto headed back to his assigned room on Ayla's ship to not only try and get a recording of whoever it was that sent that, what seemed like, recording or video image. With his skills he might be able to decipher the entire message, but until then he had only a few points to go on. Moraband, a tomb of some kind. Something regarding his past, a past that Naruto was sure was non-existent or even false. He grew up on Commando after all. And that he had to find a scroll and read it. Not a lot to go on, but that was what he had. Without a second thought, he sent a message to Ayla requesting she come to him as soon as she was able. He knew Moraband, he had done his research, even if it was illegal for some parts, and he knew that the Jedi had renamed Moraband to what it was now to try and cover up its dark history, a history Naruto could not find. He had a feeling he would have to go to the Jedi Temple and request to talk to their librarian or their historians. And if he had to, he would sneak into wherever Yoda lived and get the information from him. If someone was trying to impersonate him or something, Naruto would damn well get to the bottom of it. Who knows what would happen if someone crazy successfully managed to impersonate Naruto. Oh well, right now he needed to refresh himself and clean his armor and weapons, even if he didn't actually get into any combat. Then he would start trying to crack the code, as some say, to find out what the whole mysterious message was. For some reason he felt like he had done something similar before, but he disregarded that thought as the door to his room slid open to reveal Ayla. "The fleet is on its return to Coruscant. Mace and his men that we took aboard have settled in and his ships have set course for the shipyards at Corellia," Ayla informed him, moving closer to take a seat at his bed. "That's good. Windu's fleet suffered a major loss this day, and it will quite possibly take many months before he can set out with a fleet again," Naruto replied. True, or he could just set out on small patrols, but that his topic is for Master Windu to discuss with the fleet admirals and the Chancellor. "Now why did you call me here?" Ayla asked, tilting her head slightly. A skip of his heartbeat later and Naruto told her about the message he received on the bridge. It is definitely strange to receive such a message. You said it was something about some planet called Moraband and something about your past, but you're a clone. You were born on Commando, that is your past," Ayla said aloud, confused about the past part that Naruto told her about. "It's probably best if I try and get the whole message. I was going to do that during the duration of our time while en route back to Coruscant. If I'm able to get the whole message, it should reveal a lot more information. Oh, and just letting you know that I'll be accompanying you and General Windu back to the Jedi Temple. Try and ask to get some info on Moraband," Naruto informed her of his plans. Ayla just nodded before saying her farewells, then leaving his room. Looking towards the small desk that was in his room, that had his holocom on it, he sighed before muttering about the technology that was holo communications. Looks like he might not be getting any sleep for the next few days. In a dark room, several figures could be seen standing around an old, decayed but tightly sealed chest. "Has the message been sent?" one figure asked aloud. "It has, the message has been sent," a second figure replied. "Good, and with that message being sent we will be able to start our plans once more," the first figure replied. The group of cloaked, shrouded figures then began to laugh slowly before it turned into a maniacal laughter. Cough. "Right, let us return to our duties. We will all be called to meet again when the plan moves ahead," the first figure informed the other figures. With a burst of smoke the room emptied and all that remained was the old decayed chest that looked tightly sealed. But as the smoke lingered, and if someone was near, they would have heard the shaking of that old decayed chest, as if an animal was trapped inside yearning to get its freedom. Sitting in one of the many meditation rooms that was built into the Jedi Temple, Yoda pondered on a vision he had a few days after the rescue of Mace Windu. It troubled him, he would admit that, and it took quite a bit to trouble Yoda nowadays, being that he has been alive for several hundred years. The vision he is thinking of revolves around his young clone friend, who was, despite being a pain in the backside, was quickly becoming one of Yoda's few close friends. Naruto, it seemed, was to become a turning point in the Clone Wars, as it was starting to become known as by the general public. He remembered the vision as clear as day. He opened his eyes to see an orange horizon, a rare sight on Coruscant due to all the tall high-rises and other buildings. Yoda basked in its glow, but then, after what felt like years of enjoying that pure warmth, a coldness settled in around him, sending shivers down his back, shivers that felt full of evil intentions and emotion. Looking around him to see why, he saw the ruins of broken buildings crumbling around him. He saw slightly in the distance a mountain, with many holes in it, and as Yoda focused on it he could see what looked like the remains of carved faces. As he kept looking around him, taking in the destruction, he heard and then saw a young man come running out from building one of the many ruined buildings. Yoda saw the young man was injured and he instinctively started to move forward to give aid, only, to his shock, he could not move a limb. So Yoda was forced to watch as this young man ran, or rather limped, away from some type of danger, and as the young man got closer to Yoda he could see markings on his face, not like what Naruto had on his, but rather red fang-like markings going down to his neck. And Yoda watched as this young man got ever closer to him, seemingly not even seeing the small green man watching him. Yoda felt a burst of pure evil and then saw as a jagged spear lodged itself into the young man, completely impaling him. Yoda felt horrible from the sight, and he had seen many things in his young life. "WWHY," was all the man uttered as he fell to the ground dead, a look of shock and surprisingly sadness on his face. Yoda again felt horrible at what he saw, and as the jagged-looking spear was removed from the young man's body, Yoda became shocked at who he saw holding it. Naruto. But it wasn't Naruto. It couldn't be Naruto, for one, Naruto's hair was blonde, this one in front of him had blood-red hair, that along with his pitch-black eyes, Yoda knew this couldn't be Naruto. Before Yoda could deny his thought any longer, he started to feel a pull as if his body had something connected elsewhere and it was pulling him back. But before he was pulled away, Yoda saw this dark Naruto look directly at him. "A choice will be made, mortal. Heed what you have seen, for if he strays during his moment of change, destruction to all that is known will happen." A voice echoed throughout Yoda's mind, seemingly engraving the words on his brain. A grinning face was what he saw as his sight was taken by darkness. As Yoda drifted in the darkness, he contemplated what the dark Naruto told him. It was if the vision was a premonition for the future. During his moment of change, it was ominous, and Yoda knew that the dark Naruto was talking about an event that would happen in the future, but as he finished that thought a bright light surprised him. With a slight grunt at the sudden appearance of light, Yoda took a moment to regain his sight, but as he did this he heard a sound that he had heard only a very few amount of times where he had been invited to attend a certain event, an event where he had been invited to by long since dead friends. A wedding. The sound was of wedding bells, and when his sight came back to him, he came upon a joyous sight that brought a smile to him. A very Naboo-like wedding inn, what Yoda saw from looking around slightly, a compound. The compound in question had a wall surrounding it, but to Yoda's confusion he could see outside of the wall some type of one-way reflection or something similar, Yoda thought to himself. Yoda, turning back to where the wedding was taking place, saw a very beautiful arch covered in a multitude of flowers, and at the end of the arch, standing, waiting for his bride, Yoda saw a very different Naruto from his previous vision, the dark side vision, as Yoda thought of a proper title for it. This Naruto was donned in a white suit, his hair was cut short but not too short, and it was blonde. Yoda saw that this Naruto had blonde hair, and as Yoda focused more intently on the man he came to call a close friend, he had blue eyes, and that was all Yoda needed to know that this part of the vision, the light side vision as Yoda thought it appropriate. Eventually, as the song that came to be traditional to all weddings, even if Yoda had heard a very different version of it, started to play aloud. Yoda watched as Naruto seemed to turn towards him. Turning around, Yoda saw a woman covered in white. He saw not a face nor any defining appearance. It was if the vision did not want him to see who it was that was walking towards Naruto. Turning back as the woman in white passed through him, Yoda watched as the wedding proceeded, as the vows were spoken, as the sacred sealing of the kiss of love took place, and finally as the two newlyweds walked back towards the exit of the compound, in the direction of Yoda. As the newlyweds came closer, Yoda felt a sense of déjà vu, as Naruto in his white suit, with a large content smile looked directly at him. Yoda saw that everything other than himself and Naruto had frozen, as if time had stopped, and as he looked at Naruto he knew that this version of Naruto was happy, completely, entirely happy. Sometimes rules are meant to be broken, sometimes the leader is not always in the right. Make sure that what you have seen comes to be, for the outcome will make you and those near you happy. Emotions that were once closed off, shut deep within, will make your temple complete. Like Naruto told Yoda. This time Yoda wasn't sure if he was receiving a premonition for the future, a vision or prophecy. Yoda didn't know, and he wouldn't know until either of the outcomes came to be. Once again darkness took Yoda's sight and he awoke. He had held off on informing the council about his vision until he understood it more, and other than the fact that Naruto would have to make a choice in the future, a choice that would lead to either the destruction of all that he knew or would lead to a life of happiness for himself and all he knew. Yoda would have to meditate on this more. But as he was about to start his meditation, his comm link started beeping. Opening the channel he heard a young female voice. Master Yoda. I didn't mean to interrupt anything, but we have a problem. I think. The female trailed off. Yoda knew right away that something had shocked her into speechlessness. He had seen it before. Problem there is, describe it him, Yoda replied, knowing that if he got a description of what the problem was he might know what to do. Master Yoda, I think you should just come outside. I think the sight will explain everything, the female spoke again before closing the channel. Yoda looked at his comm link with a raised eyebrow before huffing and leaving the meditation room he had occupied, to make his way outside to see what this problem was. While it was a small journey, Yoda had to make his way past several shocked Jedi, seeing that he hastened his journey. Upon seeing a shocked T, Yoda knew that whatever this problem was, he had to deal with it. Making his way to his fellow Jedi Master, he made himself known. Shocked T, shocked you appear to be, know not what the problem is, explain can you? Yoda asked the Togruta female, being completely ignored to his slight shock. Yoda sent a small push of force to the woman, successfully knocking her out of whatever her funk was. Oh Master Yoda, I apologize about that. What I saw is definitely a shock. Never before have I ever thought that someone would do this to our temple. Shocked T spoke, before going silent again. Knowing that he would get nothing from her, Yoda made his way outside. The moment he stepped outside the temple, he saw many of his fellow Jedi, standing in shock looking towards the great temple. Making his way towards them, he turned around and stood at shock at what he saw. Painted on the temple in a horrible green, he saw painted rather expertly, a picture of himself naked with his bits covered only by what looked like a rose flower commonly found on Naboo. This picture was atrocious, it was horrible, yet Yoda secretly thought that whoever painted him did so very well. Yoda felt a vein start to throb on his head. He knew only one person who would do this, and luckily for Yoda but unluckily for the perpetrator, the person who defiled the temple was currently hanging over the temple, painting equipment still in hand, but unconscious. And as Yoda focused on the small speck that you could barely see, he could just hear the snores coming from his young friend. Moving forward to use the force to wake the blonde mischief maker, he felt a rock on the ground as he took a step. An evil smirk came onto Yoda's face as he picked up the rock. Giving out a small, rather immature, giggle, Yoda took aim with the rock and with a forced enhanced throw, pegged Naruto on his noggin. The blonde woke upside down with a swelling bruise on his forehead. He put a hand to his injury both to try and ease the pain of his new bruise and the headache he got from his night of heavy drinking. Making sense of where he was, Naruto looked down to the temple entrance and saw his audience. Shit, it was all that needed to be said.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.